So the teams have been announced. They're going to be taking part in Game 2 between the Springboks and the All Blacks. And there's some pretty interesting calls. What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. So we have finally had the teams announced for Game 2 between these two sides. Of course, last week we had a brilliant game coming in from the Springboks. Thought they had a really impressive game versus New Zealand. We, of course, did the match report for that video, which did really well on the channel. So welcome to everyone who is new. If you haven't subscribed yet, feel free to just press that button. It's quick, it's simple, and you can always unsubscribe later if you really want to. So the teams going into this round, I was expecting going in that what we'd probably be seeing is South Africa coming up with almost the identical team minus injuries and what have you, and New Zealand making some really big shifts, changing their entire team, totally new game plan, coming in a second wave, and that is not what we've got at all. So let's start off by talking about the Springboks team that's been announced. Starting off in this front row, we've got Oxen Che coming in now in the starting front row. Now, we actually have a swap here. This is the graphic taken from South Africa. It has been announced that Joseph Dweba is actually going to be starting at scrum half. So remove the hooker there. And then finally, Frans Malherbe. So a couple of switches now in this front row. I mean, Malcolm Marx, I thought, did really well last week. They obviously are expecting another physical contest. But I thought Malcolm Marx played a good, what did he play, 55, 60 minutes or so, and had a really good game. So unfortunately he's going to be moved to the bench for this game. They're obviously wanting him to have that late game impact in that second half. In the lock department, Eben Etzebeth and Lou Diaga. Of course, these are the two lads they want to have in there. I thought they both played quite well last week. Diaga had a couple of penalties going his way. Just might want to settle himself down, just try and keep that under control, because to be honest, this Springboks team wasn't really giving away penalties for a good chunk of this game. And then they had a couple of compound errors, so just get yourselves on the front foot. I think they'll be okay there. In the back row, we've got Siya Kolisi retaining that captaincy with another good game last week. Thought he played really well. Peter Steph du Toit coming in the 7 shirt, and then finally Dwayne Vermeulen moves into the number 8. Now, I actually thought Jasper Wiese had a really good game last week, but, you know, I mean, this is the strength of the Springboks team now. You can remove someone like Jasper Wiese from playing, and then you just chuck in Dwayne Vermeulen. So expect that defensive setup to be even stronger than what it was last week. But I do think Jasper Wiese has quite a wide range, shall we say, of skills. We saw that tap tackle that he got on Will Jordan last week. Arguable try-saving tackle from the length of the field. So, you know, potentially going to be a big miss there, but I think Dwayne Vermeulen is not at all a bad number 8 to chuck in there. In the halfback partnership, then we have Jaden Hendrickson coming in now because, of course, Fata Klurt taking that big injury very early on in the first game, but I thought Hendrickson played a really good game, to be fair, considering going on in the first minute. Thought he had an awesome stint in that game. Really well played for him, so I don't think this is a bad move at all. In fact, I think I said in the preview video last week, I might have liked to have seen him start last week, and we really got to see that, so fair play. Nice to see him in there. And then, of course, Andre Parlaud scoring points for days in the last game, getting penalties, conversions, drop goals, whatever you want. That's your man on your boot. Probably a really good call just to keep him in there. I think he's probably, for me, would be South Africa's number 1 choice in that fly half shirt, so I'm glad you see him in there. In the centre partnership, no switch here, of course. Damien Dialende and Lukanya Am, they both played a very different game. I actually didn't really see as much of them as I expected. Of course, we saw Lukanya Am assisting a try in that game, but playing some very different roles to what I was expecting from them. But it was a nice switch, so glad to see that. And then finally, this back three, only one change coming in here. Makazole Bapimpi retaining that left wing. Jesse Creel coming in on the right wing, because, of course, Arense now out with an injury. And finally, Damien Valemsa in that fullback position. So a couple of swaps around here for South Africa, especially in a couple of positions where I wasn't really expecting. I wasn't expecting to see the hooker change. I might have expected to see Jasper Wiese stay on. The winger probably had to be done. I'm not sure about concussion injuries that have happened. Maybe he's been ruled out for this one. But Jesse Creel, not at all a bad player to bring in as a replacement. I mean, not even a replacement. He's absolutely brilliant. So I think this is a strong-looking South Africa team. Couple of big switches. Hopefully they've made the right call with them. In terms of the replacements, then we have Malcolm March, Stephen Kitchoff, and Vincent Koch coming on. So, I mean, this is going to be a strong set of forwards to go on in that second half. They're obviously going to, I think they might even see a bit of a similarity to what we saw last week. They're going to try and make sure they just hold out that first half. And that second half, these lads are going to come on and just be an absolute monster coming on. Really looking forward to see that second half front row replacements. Rest of the replacement forwards, Franco Mostert, Jasper Wiese, and Kwagga Smith, who he really doesn't get to start a lot of games, Kwagga Smith. I think he's brilliant. Maybe someone from South Africa can drop down why Kwagga Smith doesn't tend to start that many games. people always get picked over him. Maybe there's just a talent pool that's so big it's hard to get him on. But Quagga Smith, an absolute monster as soon as he comes on to the field in that second half. He's even getting turnovers, penalties, breakaways, massive defensive work. So again, South Africa going for the 6-2 split. Probably the right move. We saw this last week. I think it worked really well. It was such a forwards-based game, and they had such an aggressive defence. I think that's a really good move. And then finally, the replacement backs. Herschel Janties comes in. Of course, they're going to need a replacement scrum half now with Faf de Klerk out, so nice to see him in there. And then finally, Villiers Leroux came on very late in that game last week and came on, scored a try. So hey, why not do the same thing again? So a couple of switches for Springboks, but I think maybe they'll be absolutely fine. These don't feel like detrimental switches. We've seen with other teams in the past. They make these big switches game on game, and it ends up being a really bad thing. I think a lot of these players that have been swapped out have actually been swapped out and replaced with very equal level players, so I don't think it's a bad move at all, but that is a strong bench. So I think even if the first half begins to get away from South Africa in this one, I think that second half could be going the way of the Boks. Moving on then, let's talk about the All Blacks, who just didn't really get going last week. Was very surprised to be seeing what actually happened last week. I was expecting going into this week there would be a total switch up. I expected a brand new team, brand new sort of movement, different players in different positions. There's going to be new tactics that we're going to try and play this. We haven't had that many switches, to be honest, so we'll have a look through the team and have a bit of a talk afterwards. Starting off in this front row, Ethan de Groot in that number 1 shirt, Taukeo in the hooker position, and then Tero Lomax in the tight head. Now, the scrum last week, it never really got going. I don't feel there was a couple of decent scrums that we saw, but there was an awful lot of like free kicks and stuff not going quite right at the scrummaging position. They'll want to work on that this week and just try and give themselves any form of platform to actually work from. South Africa did so well at just shutting down those platforms for New Zealand. In the lock department, Sam Whitelock and Scott Barrett retaining that 4-5 way around. I don't think the line-out was particularly crazy last week. We saw a couple of steals from South Africa. We saw, I don't know, a pretty bare bones line out for me personally. Again, I don't really understand this idea of putting Sam Whitelock at 4 and Scott Barrett at 5. If, for me, their preferred positions are literally the other way around. They've obviously tried to target that. I don't even know why, if you wanted this to be a game plan for maybe who they're going to mark up, you wouldn't give them the correct shirt numbers for me, and then just tell them in game actually just swap positions. Like, just wear the wrong shirt, try and throw South Africa off a bit. But they've gone for this 4-5 switch-up, so let's see how it works the second time round. In the back row, Shannon Frizzell comes in to start off, who came onto the field. I think he immediately gave away a penalty, so just settle down. It'd be nice for him to get settled into a game rather than being brought on quite late in that game and expected to try and turn it around somewhere. Sam Kane coming in as captain again. For anyone who's watching Squidge Rugby's video, did see that the other day about talking about Sam Kane just being left in no man's land trying to pick some passes and stuff. So hopefully he gets some support this week. And then Ardie Savea, one of the few shining lights in that black hole of New Zealand's game last week. Unfortunately, I thought Ardie Savea actually played pretty well. There's some decent turnovers in his own 5-metre line, good running with the ball when we got to see it from him. Some good cover tackles. So hopefully he stays to that high level because the team need him at this point. In the halfback partnership, Aaron Smith and Richie Malwunga comes in now. Of course, Beauden Barrett took that massive collision towards the end of the last game. Believe he's fine. Believe he's absolutely fine. He passed all his concussion tests and what have you. I did see an interview with him where he talked about being a bit fearful of the impact, but came back in. He's got back into training. Is on the bench, but probably a good idea just to start off Richie Malwunga for the start of the game. In the centre partnership, David Havili and Rieko Ioane. Again, yeah, I don't feel this centre partnership was fine. Rieko Ioane came off really early last week, and I don't even remember when he came off. At one point I realised he wasn't on the field, or I wasn't hearing his name at all. I'm not really sure what happened to him. He just was very, very quiet, and he sort of wasn't there, and then sort of came back on. So hopefully he'll be okay in this game. Back three, Caleb Clark, Will Jordan, and Geordie Barrett. Now, Caleb Clark, surprisingly shut down by Orense last week. He's a big lad. I expected him to go. Going to be difficult for Jesse Creel. He's also a tough guy, though. But I think that wing, potentially they want to be looking at it a bit more. Try and get him through. Use that powerhouse manoeuvre. Let him try and make a bit of ground. And then again, another quiet player here, Will Jordan, really not seeing a lot from him. And again, not necessarily having a bad game, just no one giving him the ball, no one giving him the room. We got to see sort of one break stopped down by Jasper Wiese. And other than that, no one gave him the ball in any sort of room to work with. Really difficult game. And Geordie Barrett coming in here, I think big of an ankle injury last week. It's nice to see him still in the starting team. So relatively the same team, relatively the same New Zealand team as we saw last week. So hopefully the tactics will be different if you're just going to chuck the same team out, basically. In terms of the replacements, Cody Taylor, George Barry, Bauer, and Fletcher Newell, who's a name I do not know. So looking forward to that making his debut. Big game to come in and make your debut. Hopefully has a good second. He's got a tough second half going on against the Springboks replacements bench. We'll see how that gets on. Tupo Vai in that 19 shirt, Akira Ioane in that 20 shirt. So they've made a couple of switches here. Again, I think Akira Ioane was doing okay. But yeah, Shannon Frizzell, I don't know. It's up to discretion what people think is the better move here. I don't know how they're trying to organise this team. I feel like they're just trying to find these jigsaw pieces and put them together. Again, here going for the 5-3 split. We know how much the physicality was based in the forwards last week. 5-3 split again. I'm not sure. I'm not sure this is the right move unless New Zealand are really playing expansively. I don't think this is going to help them in any way. They'll really want to try and settle that into this game and just let your backs unleash. In the replacement backs, so we do have Finlay Christie going on. It'd be nice to see him get a bit of game time. And then Bowden Barrett's going to be coming back from his injury. Hopefully comes on, makes a nice little bit of an impact. And then finally, Quinn Tupaia, again, didn't really get going when we saw him come on. Again, not a lot of room to work with that South African defence. Absolutely blitzing on people and just smashing into them. Some of these players need room to work. They're talented players. They need the room. They have the speed. Once they get it, to actually make big impacts in the game. But I think this is going to come down to if New Zealand can actually launch these backs, if they can do some of the kicking game. I have seen a couple of people mentioning they just want to see the Boks do the same thing, play the exact same way, do it again. I don't think that's the correct tactic because no doubt that's what New Zealand are expecting. So I'm expecting in this game we'll probably be seeing an awful lot more kicks from New Zealand, whether it's just grubber kicks along the ground, little chip box kicks over the top, players potentially running in hand. Richie Malwunga is very good at these little sniping runs and stuff, so I would be expecting to see these backs do a lot more kicks. They know how fast the Springboks defence is going to come up off the line. For me, I would want to see a preemptive technique coming in from the Springboks here. I would actually try and play the same way, but be expecting New Zealand to be doing these little kicks and create a little contingency plan. So you still play the exact same way, make New Zealand think you haven't changed anything, and then actually you've had a couple of, maybe you move your full back a little bit closer, maybe you move your wings in a little bit, don't drop so deep, maybe you get a few more kicks going long, but you'll still be able to recover them. But you just shut down that little chip over the top, allows you to keep that strong defence. I think maybe you could be able to catch New Zealand off guard. So in terms of a score prediction, what do we think for this one? I think, again, I'm going to be leaning towards South Africa. They look so dominant in that first game in almost every area of the game. I think New Zealand would have to make an immense switch up here. I think for me, South Africa have just got to not take the foot off the gas now. They've got to get in there. They've got to play hard. They've got to try and make sure they just keep that momentum going. A couple of injuries has sort of maybe knocked their team a little bit, but I think that bench for South Africa is going to be so big. I think that second half could really open up for them. So I'm going to go for a South Africa win. I'm going to say more than what I predicted last week, but I don't think it'll be as much finally as the final score was last week. So I'm going to say South Africa to win by 7 this week, making those big calls. But of course, guys, what do I know about rugby? I know absolutely nothing. So make sure you guys do drop down in the comments your thoughts on the game, your score predictions, all that good stuff. And make sure you are putting in your Super Brew teams before we get round to the weekend. It gets a little bit tight because Australia and Argentina are announcing so late today. So we only really have like a day to do it. But make sure you are signed up, get those teams put in because it's all to play for. But I hope you've all enjoyed today, guys. I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.